Thank you for inviting me here today to share my perspective as a college student on free speech in our universities. My name is Josiah Joner. I'm a sophomore at Stanford University, and I'm an editor at the Stanford Review. There are countless examples from college campuses across the country where students and administrators have suppressed free speech on campuses. Recently, protesters and a high-ranking administrator at Stanford Law School prevented Judge Kyle Duncan from speaking. I covered this incident with my colleagues in the Stanford Review. These are the institutions currently educating the next generation of world leaders, and without a basic respect for free speech on college campuses, the integrity of both these institutions and these future leaders will slowly degrade. Unfortunately, these incidents that suppress free speech have become an all too common occurrence on college campuses. On Thursday, March 9th, Judge Kyle Duncan of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals was invited to speak at Stanford Law School by the Stanford Federalist Society. Days before the event, however, protesting students asked the Federalist Society to cancel the event or move it to an online format because of their concerns with Judge Duncan's previous statements and actions. These students posted flyers that condemned Judge Duncan and called out the individual members of the Federalist Society's board, saying that they should be ashamed. Then, on the day of Judge Duncan's Stanford speech, close to 100 students protested Judge Duncan, proceeding to enter the event and shout at him during his remarks. The student protesters heckled Judge Duncan profusely, preventing the judge from speaking in what was one of the latest examples of the heckler's veto used to suppress free speech on our campus. They held obscene signs and shouted obscene remarks, and Judge Duncan was not able to deliver his lecture. While the protests were led by dozens of students, at the center of the incident was a university administrator, Stanford Law School's Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Frustrated with the disruptive students, Judge Duncan asked for an administrator to hopefully restore normalcy to the room and allow him to speak. After his request for an administrator, Dean Tyrion Steinbeck stepped up to the podium and pulled out her prepared remarks. And in a 6-minute speech, Dean Steinbeck spoke freely, without students heckling her speech. Dean Steinbeck began by condemning Judge Duncan's harmful viewpoints, calling him out for his stances that she disagrees with. In her speech, the dean affirmed her supposed commitment to free speech, but she then continued to contradict her own words. Looking out to the crowd of protesters, those who were holding obscene signs and heckling the judge, Dean Steinbeck said, "I look out and I don't ask what is going on here. I look out and I say, I'm glad this is going on here." Dean Steinbeck condoned and encouraged the protest that silenced Judge Duncan, and her speech was met with applause from the protesters at the end. Federal marshals had to step in and escort Judge Duncan from the event, and he was effectively prevented from exercising his freedom of speech under both the First Amendment and Stanford's own policies. The incident at Stanford Law School is a very concerning example of students destroying a speaker's right to share their beliefs on campus. However, most concerning from this incident was the active role of a university administrator in violating Judge Duncan's free speech. The incident demonstrates a concerning trend in colleges: the hiring of administrators who are not committed to the principles of free speech or even the university's own policies regarding free speech. Many of these university administrators, like Dean Steinbeck, a diversity, equity, and inclusion administrator, have taken a role in universities that places a greater emphasis on restricting what is and what is not acceptable, rather than promoting diversity of thought and free speech, which spurs a functioning society and rigorous intellectual debate. It is because of incidents like this and administrators like Dean Steinbeck that students, both conservative and liberal, at Stanford and college campuses around the country are too scared to speak up in the classroom and share their viewpoints. It has instilled angst into each student for fear of sharing their opinions. Anything they say might also be viciously condemned by these same university administrators. The best option is to merely stay silent and keep one's opinions to themselves. While these administrators claim to create a more open and inclusive environment, they are in fact contributing to just the opposite: a culture which signals conformity and destroys academic debate because of fear of sharing one's opinions. Debate has been expelled from the classroom and forced to die altogether or take refuge in a few remaining groups that still offer forums for open and free discussion. We at the Stanford Review are one of those few groups on campus still dedicated to the principle of free speech and rigorous intellectual debate. We are concerned over the precedent that this sets for Stanford and other colleges across the country. This environment has exiled free expression and debate outside of the classroom, the very spot where it is most needed and essential. It is my hope that future students at our colleges do not continue to experience the degradation of free speech and face the threats that may come with sharing their opinions. This is not a conservative issue, and this is not a liberal issue. This issue of free speech is at the core of what defines our society in the United States, and without it, these institutions will fail. Congress now has an opportunity to ensure our institutions preserve First Amendment rights and protect free speech on college campuses. Thank you.